G'day guys. So I'm Nicholas Muldoon and I'm the Greenhopper Product Manager. I'm going to take 10 minutes this morning just before we break for lunch and give you a rundown on some of the things that we've found useful in our team to both improve our quality and improve the speed at which we ship. So this is particularly important because our customers, you guys, you value change. You value our ability to change as you change. So we're concerned about growth, obviously, and if we're not providing constant value and listening to our customers' feedback, then we won't have you guys. So we're very focused on being able to respond quickly to change, and we find it really important to be able to deliver working software. So this whole discussion between waterfall and agile, if you think of the Agile Manifesto, they talk about delivering software as opposed to documentation requirements. That's what we're all about. So we're going to look at this in two sections. First of all, we're going to look at quality, and then we'll go on to speed. So in terms of quality, the quality of our product is dictated by our customers and by our customer interaction. You guys are helping us drive the product forward. So some things that are really important for us are the ideas that customers bring to us. And having a public backlog where our customers can raise defects, can raise stories, feature requests and improvements is particularly important. We get this from a wide variety of sources. We get this from customer forum, for instance, from our user task force, and even from Twitter, ideas are raised. When I talk about our user task force, that's you've heard a lot about it, obviously, in the sessions over the past yesterday and this morning. But the user task force is particularly important for us because we go out and we speak with customers. We have at the moment we have about 25 customers that we speak with, and we're always looking for new people to join the task force. And we cycle around and speak with those people about different aspects of the product, what they're using the product for, and getting new ideas and feedback and trying to identify the gaps where we let people down. The other area that ideas come from is the customer forum. So if you've ever been on the customer forum, you've probably bumped into a gentleman by the name of Bill Parker. Bill Parker is one of our oldest customers, and he's based in Sydney. And he's very passionate about helping other customers get up to speed and get using Greenhopper as effectively as possible. So having things like a public backlog, a user task force, and indeed a customer forum where customers can talk to one another can be really useful for you and your products, your projects, to ensure that you've got a prioritized backlog of the features and the functionality that your customers want. We move on from ideas to testing. Now, obviously, testing is very important. At Atlassian, we place a very high emphasis on dogfooding, so that is using our products during development, prior to release. But of course, using the product during development does not lead to testing all of the edge cases. We use a common set of functionality. We don't change our template and configuration, and we certainly can't replicate the environment of all of our customers. So we have to create unit and functional tests that obviously look out for regressions, but as well test different edge cases that we might not have experienced. And one other part that's particularly important for our edge cases is actually our customer sandboxes. So the customer sandboxes are predominantly our user task force customers that I mentioned earlier that provide the feedback. And not only through customer interviews, but also through trying our pre-release software on a server that we provide for them. So being able to deploy daily or weekly, whatever our time frame is, to a customer sandbox, it basically assures me as a product manager that I'm release ready. So if you want to ensure that you're always ready to release, then having something like a customer sandbox is a great way to do that. And it's a great way to get feedback from your customers prior to perhaps your final sprint. When you've still got time to go before you release, you get that feedback and you can incorporate that feedback in the release, which has been particularly useful for Greenhopper 5. Of course, this is just another way of dogfooding, but it's dogfooding those edge cases so that we internally, as I said, we can't dogfood all these edge cases. We have our common path. We use the product how we use it. But our customers can get into the sandbox and they can play around with the functionality that matters most to them. We move on from the quality aspect to speed. And the most important thing to keep in mind is that you want to minimize the overhead. You want to minimize the overhead for your team. So some of the overhead that we've found, I suppose it's certainly become apparent to me in our Greenhopper 5 release. We previously worked as a team in an open plan office. And as you've heard, Atlassian's been growing. We've added a lot more engineers, and due to that, our team's actually been put in some temporary storage space above the pub next door before we move into larger premises. And so we've gone from an open plan office into, with what we must have 5 or 6 different product teams there, into one office space that's just Greenhopper. And for my money, this has been a really great move for us, especially for this release. The interactions and the feedback that you get from your peers is absolutely fantastic. But for Greenhopper 5, we'd been working on it so long that moving the team into our own office for 2 months, we knew what all the feedback was, right? We knew what we were doing. We just had to get our head down and actually do it. So minimizing the distractions from interactions with our peers has actually worked really well in the Greenhopper 5 release. That will revert once we move to larger premises across the road. The other thing is infrastructure. Atlassian places a lot of emphasis on giving the developers the tools they need to work effectively. So none of this, I'm waiting for the build, I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee. Let's make sure that we can, and indeed yesterday if you're in the DevTools State of the Union, one of the things we're looking at is the Bamboo parallel builds. So being able to give this feedback to the developers as quickly as possible. And that's important because obviously if they're committing early and often, we want to know how effective was their work? Did they break the build? If so, let's fix it up. Overhead that is actually really useful are things like daily stand-ups. Having your team together for 5 minutes in the morning or whenever suitable, but having your team together as we do for 5 minutes in the morning, we talk about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, and if there's any blockers, the team will split off and they'll go and talk about that. So you might have 2 guys or a couple of the girls will go and talk about particular issues that they've got, and I've got a blocker here, I need to do something with this functionality, can you give me a hand? But it's a great way to verbalize the issues that you're having and get feedback from your peers. So that's a form of overhead that I definitely subscribe to. I mentioned briefly about the customer sandboxes. Customer sandboxes are one aspect of our deployment policy. So at the moment, Nick Manier, he actually mentioned JDog, which is the Jira dog fooding server. We have GDog, which is a Greenhopper dog fooding server, funnily enough. And we have a staged deployment plan. Being able to deploy to ourselves first and test the functionality within our own team is fantastic. But as we get more comfortable with the product, as we get closer to release, we deploy it to more and more teams internally. And so JDog, they moved to a nightly build of Greenhopper about halfway through our 5.0 release. And then, of course, towards the end of our release, we push it to the customer sandboxes as part of our continuous deployment scenario. The deployment is not only our dog fooding, though, it is also our testing servers, our testing environments. So we will test against the different environments of Jira, for instance, and also Jira Studio. So for your own teams, you want to make sure that for every commit, well, I would recommend at least for every commit, that you are testing those builds against all your different environments. And if you're committing early and you're committing often, as I mentioned, then you've got that feedback for your developers. And it ties back into being release ready. If you know that the build is green and you're happy with your functionality, then you're comfortable that you're ready for release. Finally, it comes down to Kaizen. So Kaizen is continuous improvement. And I love, there's one quote that I heard recently at DevOps Down Under, and that was, best practice is the end of improvement. So you've got to take best practice, but you've got to continuously look at your team and look at your operations and how you function and see where you can improve. So, I mean, improvements won't just come from your team, they'll come from your developers, your QA engineers, from Scrum Masters, they will come from your customers. Customers have certainly given us suggestions as to how we can improve the provision of our software. So having, I suppose, an informal sort of thinking all the time about how can we improve our process is fantastic, but also having a retrospective, which is a more formalized, we do a retrospective at the end of each sprint. It's a formalized process where we look at what went well in our sprint, what did not go so well, and what are our action items to improve upon over the coming weeks, months, whatever it may be. We can put a flag in the sand and say, this is where we want to be, and so we're going to work towards that, incremental steps to reach our goal of an improved process. So in that vein, I wanted to say thank you very much for taking your time out of your morning. If you have any feedback on how I could improve my presentation in future, I'd love you to grab me or get me via Twitter, email, or give me a phone call. That'd be fantastic. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So we have a very small. How large is our team, and how long do our daily stand-ups last? So our team is 5 people, so 5 developers, and we also rely on people that come to our daily stand-ups perhaps once a week, our tech writers or QA people. But our daily stand-up normally lasts no more than 5 minutes. So it's very brief. Yep. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.